Joining us for some perspective of what's going on today in Kosovo is Mr. James Jatras. He is an advocate for the Serbian community here in Washington, D.C. Jim, thanks for joining us on the broadcast. Can you tell us what kind of influence does radical Islam today have in Kosovo?
George, the radical Islamic movement is strong in Kosovo and growing. It has been growing throughout the disorders of the 90s and is growing today. We have before our eyes what had been a Christian country full of churches becoming a Muslim country full of mosques, and this is done directly through violence and threat of violence. There has been al-Qaeda links in Kosovo with the Kosovo Liberation Army, so-called, which dominates the local administration there. These are closely connected to the criminal rackets that operate throughout Europe. Kosovo is one of the main conduits for heroin manufactured from Afghan opium to get into Europe. It's a great transit point also not only for the drug trade but for the slave trade. Women and even children that are kidnapped from places like Belarus, Ukraine, are trafficked from Kosovo and then go through the network of the Albanian mafia through the rest of Europe.
Jim, when we look back a couple of years ago when the Clinton administration went into Bosnia-Herzegovina, went and dealt with Slobodan Milosevic, came under the guise of bringing democracy, trying to bring peace in this region, and all these years later, what you're telling me is that we're seeing a base emerge in this part of the world for Jihad, for al-Qaeda individuals.
Absolutely. Everything that the American people think they might know about the war on terror, the war on drugs, the war against organized crime is stood on its head in Kosovo. Here we have, for reasons that are very hard to explain, a policy that de facto, if not in intent, ends up supporting the coming to power of the radical Muslim leadership of the Kosovo Liberation Army, the eradication of the Christian community there, and bestowing state power on organized crime and terrorist elements.
What is it about Kosovo that is so attractive to these radical Muslims?
I think partly it's its location, that it is a wonderful beachhead into the rest of Europe, and the other thing, it is available. It is where the international community, including the United States, starting with the Clinton administration, was sold on the idea of Muslim victimhood that they could then translate into a quest for power where then they can victimize others.
Wahhabi Islam, it's a term that our viewers are very familiar with, being exported from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Talk about the influence of Wahhabi Islam in Kosovo.
As some people might be familiar, there had been to a large extent that the Albanian community in Serbia and in Kosovo specifically was not entirely religious. There was the legacy of the communist period. That has reversed in the last few decades, where more and more the influence is from the outside, fueled by the money from Saudi Arabia and also from the Gulf states to build these mosques, to bring in the teachers, to bring in the literature, and to validate a quest for power based on violence and the eradication of the indigenous Christian community there.
Jim, all of this is taking place under the watchful eye of NATO and of the United Nations. Why is the U.S. State Department not watching this? Why are they not saying anything about this?
I think we have a policy that began under the Clinton administration but became institutionalized, became part of the structure of our foreign policy for many years based on a certain set of assumptions. You have the inertia of not wanting to change an established policy. You have a desire to try to impress our friends, supposedly in Riyadh and in Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, Egypt, that we are the friends of a Muslim population here. You also have the element of fear that the international presence, both NATO and the United Nations, is afraid, and partly with good reason, that if they were to reverse their course in giving power to the Muslim Albanian community there, that the violence that has been directed against the Serbs and also other minorities, the Jews, the Roma, would be directed at the internationals as well. So I think there's a sense that we must hurry up in the dark of night, hand Kosovo over to the Muslim Albanians, and hope the problem goes away rather than face what we've helped create there in Kosovo.
Now, it's one thing to accuse the United Nations or NATO or the State Department for not stepping in and making this wrong right. But what about the leadership in Kosovo? Why are they tolerating such activities to take place in their region?
If you mean the Albanian Muslim leadership, which is an administration operating under the United Nations, it's quite simple. These are themselves the head of the criminal rackets and of the terrorist presence. Two of the main leaders of the Kosovo Albanians, Ramush Haradinaj and Hashim Taci, met with Osama bin Laden in 1995 in Tirana to plan the jihad in Kosovo. Another leader of the Kosovo Albanians, their so-called Prime Minister, Agim Ceku, is an indicted war criminal. These three people, according to German intelligence, meet regularly to plan the operations of the criminal rackets in Kosovo. That's why they're doing this.
Obviously, Serbia and the Serbs have quite a dark history in the region as well. Talk about the reconciliation efforts, if any, are going on, taking place in that region to heal some of the atrocities that have taken place.
Nobody in the Balkans has clean hands, but unlike some of the caricatures we've had in the past, this is not a case of white hats and black hats. We have ordinary people on both sides who are simply looking for a decent life and be able to live in peace and security. The Serbian government has offered to the Albanian community in Kosovo absolutely anything and everything they could possibly want. And after all, we have Muslim minorities that live elsewhere in Europe in many places and live very good lives with the same kind of rules that we expect in a decent democratic society. What is being demanded of the Serbian side, however, in Kosovo is they accept being a persecuted Christian minority in a Muslim land, try to think of one Muslim country where that is a good status to be in, especially in Kosovo. That will probably lead in very short order to their total eradication.
Jim Contras, an advocate for the Serbian Orthodox community, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast.
Thank you, George.